After establishing the reformulation of the Gen framework, a challenge remains. Is this theory a lens we impose on the industry, or something the industry itself produces? The second to last category, path forced, argues the latter. To reiterate for both newcomers and the involved, based on my study, it can be described as this. Silly animation, or this in its original text, is an informal, yet platform-visible micro-industry operating primarily through personal channels, where solo creators adapt novels or scenarios into short-form 3 to 6-minute animated videos at a sustained pace of approximately 2 days per upload. The industry's material backbone is vector graphics, which is a rational production decision for viability rather than an aesthetic choice. Vector assets are scalable, reusable, and accumulate into private libraries over time, making such an aggressive upload cadence economically viable for operators. This seems to be structurally central to the industry's character, enabling everything from resource sharing between creators to the industry's defining upload rhythm. The rhythm of one video every 2 days isn't a creative decision, but a conditioned behavioral norm, shaped by platform algorithmic logic that rewards consistency and punishes stagnation. Creators who slow down lose visibility, lose audience momentum, and consequently lose income. The cadence is therefore understood as platform-imposed piecework rather than as a chosen production schedule, and the silly animation label functions as the cultural management of its consequences, a self-deprecating paratext that preemptively frames aesthetic limitation as identity rather than failure. Critically, this isn't hobby production. Some actual people depend on this for their livelihood, which transforms every creative decision into an economic calculation. Quality, experimentation, and pacing are all negotiated against the hard constraint of sustainable income. This economic reality gives the industry its peculiar tension. Creators are simultaneously artists, adapters, and micro-entrepreneurs, conducting alone without institutional support, collective bargaining, or shared infrastructure beyond what the platform itself provides. The industry has no unified identity. There's no studio, no collective brand, no governing body, yet exhibits remarkably consistent norms in visual style, production logic, content purpose, and even self-designation. This coherence without coordination is one of the industry's most theoretically striking features. Shared conventions have emerged and remain unchanged not through enforcement, but through the quiet pressure of a shared environment. Same platform, same source material culture, same material constraints, same economic stakes. By the time a creator has been active in this environment long enough to understand it, the resource logic, or the industry's nonverbal rule, as I usually use to mention about it, has already shaped their production habits. The platform rhythm has already modified their output behavior. The audience's atmospheric expectations have already calibrated their adaptive instincts, and the observable patterns of those who came before have already narrowed the apparent space of viable approaches. These observations aren't coincidental patterns. They're the predictable output of an environment whose pressures are specific enough, consistent enough, and inescapable enough to produce recognizable orientations in the people they act upon, regardless of those people's individual intentions. From these observations is what the Gen framework describes. The industry, left to its own pressure, converges. The weight of fundamental solitude, audience expectation, and economic necessity, sustained long enough, leaves individuals with a narrowing set of orientations they can realistically inhabit. Gen 1 holds the primordial reference point of this convergence. It's the ground that formed before anyone thought a name for these animations, shaped by how individuals collectively treated an industry that had no institution to define it for them. It's the origin that the industry keeps returning to, the initial character design that makes this space recognizable as itself. Gen 2 answers what Gen 1 alone can't sustain. Audiences that already know the source material, who came carrying their own atmospheric expectations, or even outsiders who just knew about the story through the animation, can be held indefinitely by a foundation that was never built for such narration. The non-human factor must become approachable and better felt by the vast. And Gen 3 emerges from an individual who has refined their subjectivity to stand out enough for rampant spread, accompanied by sustained derivative production, to form a structural force that pulls others toward them personally. By essence, others follow tendencies not out of dependency, but because that refinement lowers the cost of their own. And in an industry where even a slight model uplift can widen the margin between surviving the cadence and being consumed by it, that pull is anything but incidental. Situating from the path of inevitability, this framework simply names what was already there. There's a hidden fact that's also worth bringing up. Time moves in one direction here. It always has. The creator who entered this industry carrying nothing but a source and a deadline didn't choose the ground they stood on, the aesthetic they inherited, the audience waiting to verify what they already knew, or the economic current pulling them forward before they had finished deciding their goal. The industry received them the way it receives everyone, quietly embraced them without pre-signs. What compiles along that axis was never entirely theirs, but they carried it anyway. They're still carrying it now. And the path, changeless, remains exactly one direction long.